This is the award-winning Lee Pitts Live.
Brought to you by the North Law Firm. For car accidents and negligent security cases, call Joe at 239-337-1191. And by Lee Health.
Southwest Florida, thanks for joining us this morning on the award-winning Lee Pitts Live. Of course, I'm your host, Lee Pitts, and we're so thrilled to wrap up 4 weeks we've had here at Galisano's Children's Hospital of Southwest Florida. The commendations have just been outstanding. I'm sure we'll be coming back in the future. We got a fabulous show lined up for you today. We get a chance to talk to Dr. Patrick Davis. He's the author of Defamed and Fired, Silence, Doubtful, Dutiful, Dissent in Southwest Florida. You'll find out about his story and how he was fired from Florida Gulf Coast University. Also, we get a chance to we'll have Sylvia Dorismere being here with her new show, Career Minutes with Sylvia. She has a fabulous guest. She'll talk to Christopher Metley, the CEO of Golden Care Home Health. All that is happening on Lee Pitts Live. We'll be right back. Southwest Florida, we're so thrilled to have here on this show a longtime guest on this Lee Pitts Live from back in the early 2000s, and he's back again. He's got a fabulous book written. Dr. Patrick Davis, the author of Defamed and Fired. Let's welcome him. Let's bump this in. Hey, just that title itself, Defamed and Fired. Then you add on Silencing, Dutiful, Dissent, and Southwest Florida. Tell us how you came up with that title, first of all.
I was trying to think of something that was appropriate, and that was the appropriate title for the book. That's exactly what happened to myself and other people who raised some of the concerns, and so I thought that may be most appropriate.
And I like that little part, Silencing Dutiful Dissent.
Yes, sir.
How do you define dutiful dissent?
I think dutiful dissent is where we have an obligation to speak against injustices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I share the same kind of generational background where people would say, well, this is not right, and you have to say something. So dutiful dissent suggests that when something is wrong, you have to say something.
Mm-hmm. You've always been outspoken, and we'll get you back here in the future on some other things that you've been passionate about.
Yes,
it's a disparity in grades amongst minority students compared to white students, and,
yes,
and what's going on to have that big inequity there. But that's another topic.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to the whole idea that if you speak out, you could be reprimanded, and how that all plays out, not only for you, but other minorities in the area who may speak out on their jobs in corporations.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that's something that I did not know was a reality until, again, you don't know it until it happens to you. My experience, and I can't speak of what's happening currently at FGCU because I haven't been there for a few years, but during my tenure there, various people who would say this doesn't seem right, whether it's a woman speaking out saying that I'm receiving unequal pay because I'm a female, they found themselves in the crosshairs, if you will, of an administration that seemed bent on silencing people. Mm-hmm. And so what the individuals found, and this is all in the public domain, which is the individual says, I think I'm being treated unfairly here. That individual finds him or herself then the target of multiple complaints and sometimes lurid accusations, sexually lurid accusations, and seemingly designed to discredit that individual, defame the individual, and then eventually those individuals found themselves without a job.
Okay, we're going to go into that in a minute, but let's do this first.
Okay.
First, let's establish the fact that you were a professor at Florida Gulf Coast University. Correct. For 8 years.
Correct.
Also, give us some background on you. Dr. Patrick Davis, give us your education background. Let's establish you as a credible person for this conversation.
Sure. I pursued my master's and my doctoral degree in counselor education at Texas A&M University in Commerce, Texas. After getting my doctoral degree, before getting my doctoral degree, I served as a counselor in a variety of places, working with felons or individuals who the courts had ordered into counseling because of their untoward behaviors. I pursued my doctorate and completed in 2000 at Texas A&M, And then upon completing the doctorate degree, I was hired by the University of North Carolina in Greensboro, which is one of the best counseling programs in the nation, and served there for 2 years. And then a position came open at FGCU, which is about 2 hours or 2.5 hours from my home in Orlando. And I decided to transition to the school down here. And so I have to tell you some background, Lee. When I was first showing some interest in the FGCU position, my chair said, "Are you sure this is a good decision for you? Because FGCU does not offer tenure, whereas where you are is one of the best programs in the nation. They offer tenure. FGCU does not offer tenure. Are you sure this is a good career move for you?" I said to him, "I've never had any problems with my performance. I've always exceeded all expectations, so I'm not afraid of losing my job because of poor performance."
All right. What is tenure? Sesame Street that for our viewers.
Sure. Tenure is where a professor can't be fired unless there's some significant infractions. And so most professors seek tenure track positions because they know that in that domain, if they don't have tenure, they can be harassed, they can be fired without real legitimate cause.
And when you're working in an environment, and some of that comes out in your book, which is a fabulous book that we're seeing on the screen, as a professor in the world of education, that's one of the things. There are diverse opinions about a wide range of things.
Correct.
That is what higher education
That is
institutions
correct.
are all about.
That is correct.
So to have tenure allows you to continue to grow the body of knowledge in different viewpoints.
That is absolutely right. It's called the unfettered pursuit of truth. Unfettered, that nothing is slowing you down. You get to pursue truth wherever that pursuit takes you. And just some little background as relates to tenure. Tenure became an issue years ago at a school in California where a professor was criticizing the president for the use of Chinese slave labor. His wife fired this professor. They said that's not just to fire this individual because he was just simply telling the truth. And so therefore tenure, as you were saying yourself, tenure allows individuals to pursue a variety of issues, even some that are controversial, because that is the goal of higher education, is to educate individuals, whether it's controversial or not.
When you find, would you say that you felt that you were being discriminated against at Florida Gulf Coast University?
And that's what initially my experience was very positive initially. I was there for 6 or 7 years. I always exceeded all expectations in teaching, scholarship, and service. I was promoted. But then I found that there were some uneven practices in the College of Education. And I even went to the president, Dr. Bradshaw, who was there at the time, and I said, there appears to be some uneven practices in the College of Education. He says, "I've heard of those issues. Be patient with me, and we'll try to resolve those." I shared those concerns with that dean at the time. Again, this is in the public record. And right after sharing those concerns, my life changed pretty drastically.
What were some of the concerns that you shared? Maybe 2 top concerns.
Sure. Again, I had been there. My tenure was longer than some of my colleagues. Again, my evaluations were stellar. But other folks were being promoted in the college faster than I was and receiving positions of administrative positions.
That you had applied for?
That I had applied for. Well, actually, there was no consideration for an application. They just offered these. They just appointed these individuals. And so and that's what I alleged, that there appeared to be some kind of a unequal process in the College of Education, the college, that did not treat everybody fairly. And I'm not sure if it was an actual fact there was a discrimination. I just said there appears to be some discriminatory practices taking place.
When you're thinking about appears to be some discriminatory practice, and particularly as it related to you, are you thinking discrimination based on race?
I would say gender and race, correct.
Because your book outlines where many females complained and felt that they were being discriminated as well.
That's correct.
When people are looking at you right now and saying, "Hey, Florida Gulf Coast University, that's a pillar in the community." When people see Florida Gulf Coast University, hear about Florida Gulf Coast University, what do you want them to know?
I think Florida Gulf Coast University has tremendous potential to do tremendously good things in the community. It was designed to serve an area of Southwest Florida that did not have higher educational opportunities. And so I think FGCU it could be a beacon of hope for lots of individuals who are looking to advance their educational pursuits as well as their careers of choice. And so I would want people to know that the university stands as a beacon. However, they had some challenges they had to confront.
What is this book about?
That book is about trying to, if I were to say it in a short phrase, trying to identify and highlight those individual practices that affected the lives of real people. There are people who were defamed and fired at FGCU who did not deserve those kind of consequences in which they received. There were people who came here with good intentions to work and provide an educational experience for people who were in this area and then found themselves with their careers in shambles because of a few, and I say that critically, there are few administrators who were just bent on seemingly silencing people who raised concerns of unfair treatment.
When it comes specifically to you, what would you say are the two straws that broke the camel's back that came upon you? What are the two things that came upon you, main things to defame you, and why would Florida Gulf Coast University have a problem with you? I know it's laid out in the book. I want you to talk about that.
What I've learned, and not just my case, and again, I reference it is because it's in the public record, that when individuals would raise concerns of unfair treatment, they received a barrage of criticisms and complaints themselves and found themselves in a very difficult place. And so, I didn't know this was the case until I started experiencing it myself. When I shared concerns of unfair treatment in the college, I found myself then getting all these complaints against me that were baseless. I'd never heard of such a thing. Some were anonymous, and then I was finding myself at the provost's office for minor, quote-unquote, concerns or complaints. The provost was calling me back to his office again. We need to meet with you. I had a complaint against you. We had to meet with you.
So essentially, you were uppity Negro.
And so again and again, he would bring me to his office and say, "Hey, we had a complaint against you." And I said, "One, this is one untrue," and he would investigate these complaints thoroughly, find that they're baseless, unfounded. He'd dismiss it, and then another 2 weeks would pass, another complaint would come to his desk. He'd call me back to his office, and I think the thing that broke my back was where they brought me in, and they said there was a complaint against you, and I said, "Okay, what was alleged that I did?" He said, "Unprofessional behavior in the classroom." I said, "What does that mean? What did I do that was unprofessional in the classroom?" And then the associate provost said, "I can't tell you that." I said, "Wait, you're saying that I'm going to be on leave, you've confiscated my computer, you've taken my ID, my badge, my keys and everything for a complaint without even doing an investigation. You're basically discharging me without doing an investigation. Then I ask you, what am I alleged as to doing? And you tell me you can't tell me. I won't tell you that."
And even to this day?
Later, I'll tell you, I'll try to catch up with that. I asked him then thereby who complained, who submitted the complaint. He said, I can't tell you that either. And so I said to the associate provost, that doesn't seem to make sense to me. This seems like a violation of due process. I should have an idea as to what the allegations were against me and who was the accuser. And they just refused to tell me. He said, the provost told me I would find out that information during the disciplinary hearing. And I said, that just seemed ridiculous. How could I know what is alleged against me? How could I prepare my defense without knowing what the allegations are? And so that, I think, if you were to ask something that broke my personal back. And then I have to add also, the provost would say to me, you can't, and say to others, individuals, do not talk about this to anybody. Do not talk about this. There's a confidentiality clause. Don't talk about this. But then, realistically, just again, it's in the record, they would start leaking stuff to the press that was defaming my name. And I was saying to them, you guys are telling me to stay confidential, but you're leaking stuff to the press about this that's having just a devastating impact on my reputation.
And that can help you, it can hurt you in other opportunities for jobs because it's all out on the social media.
Absolutely.
Now, in this book, I noticed one of the things in reading your book is that you were very thorough and detailed.
Correct.
Almost to the degree where you almost had what we call in old school footnotes.
Correct.
You weren't just saying
That
things.
is
You were like, here's what happened. Here's an example of it. Here's documented evidence.
That is
You
correct.
can go here. You can go there. This is in the public eye.
That's correct.
Were you afraid when you were writing this book? At this point, it was therapy because you're out of the institution, but you were documenting things while you were in the institution.
That's correct. And I was not concerned about being sued or any repercussions in that regard because it's all in the public record. And so I was simply taking what was in the public record and chronicling it and putting it in a readable format whereby individuals can go to those respective websites, news websites, and say, okay, yeah, this individual said when they expressed some concerns, these things happened to them. And so if you look at the record, there are so many lawsuits against FGCU,
Right.
and they paid millions and millions of dollars to sell those suits, but also they secured those individuals' silence. because after I pay you off, you can't talk about what happened here.
What was going through your mind? I know you weren't there then when you saw the students on FGCU campus. I saw what the students were saying there was racism, and they were marching and protesting, and it kind of played out and disappeared.
Correct. What it said to me was that the culture that individuals had complained about years earlier was not attended to by the university administration. Years earlier, the president commissioned an individual to do a survey of the climate on campus. He found there's something wrong here, so let's do a survey as to how people are experiencing their work environment. And again, if you look at the survey, folks are saying something's wrong here, and what's wrong is we fear retaliation by the provost's office. He's discriminating against people. He's firing people he should have hired, and kept, and keeping people he should have fired. It seems like it's personal vendettas. And again, if you look at the synopsis of those surveys, the author of the survey said the synopsis is folks are upset about what's happening in the provost's office.
How has this impacted you, your career, your life?
In some ways negatively, in some ways positively. My kids grew up here, and my kids are in the school system here. And because I'd lost my job here and was defamed here, that made it very difficult for me to go other places because, again, folks are going to do a background check, maybe a simple Google search to see, okay, who are we hiring? And so what is set up there about this individual? And what I guess offended me about the process at FGCU was the allegations were simply false. What's in the press is false. And so they would feed stories to the press which are absolutely false. They're baseless. But because people often believe what they read, you don't have an opportunity to really.
You decided not to sue the university.
Yeah.
Why?
I filed an EEOC complaint against the university, and I've never done that before in 30 years of employment. I hired a lawyer, and I've never done that again before. It cost me a lot of money to hire the lawyer and to file those kind of complaints. When I got what's called a right to sue letter from the EEOC, they say now you have a right to sue the university. They send you a letter saying you have a right to sue them. You have 90 days to sue them. I sat with my wife and we just discussed it. I talked to my lawyer. She said it's going to cost this much money to up front to try to sue this university. And the university has unlimited funds, and they fight very vociferously against their former employees. And so I just said I cannot afford to pay more money, take more food off my kids' table to sue those individuals. I will just take this in my chest. I'll talk about it one day because, by the way, when I was leaving, I told the provost, I'm going to tell anybody who will listen, this is wrong, and I'm going to tell anybody who will listen.
This is such a great read. How can people get this book?
It's on Amazon. It's Defamed and Fired at Amazon.com, and you can get it in either electronic version or the hard copy.
I encourage anybody to read the book. Why don't you read an excerpt from your book?
All right, sure. This is the chapter called FGCU, a looming, albeit well-manicured career graveyard. Say it again. FGCU, a looming, albeit well-manicured career graveyard. The budding promise of Florida Gulf Coast University, I will start again. The budding promise of Florida Gulf Coast University in the heart of paradise has been counterbalanced by alarming, documented employee dissatisfaction. As described earlier herein, employees repeatedly asserted that the administration, often due to a series of personal vendettas, quote unquote, can and has retaliated against faculty and staff members who complain about unequal treatment at the very beautiful school.
When people get your book, who should read this book?
An individual who was a renowned professor at Cal State University, he read it and said this is critical for higher educational people who are interested in higher education across the country, because he said this is what can happen when schools do not have tenure to protect faculty, where administrators can abuse individuals without any consequences. And so again, this story is not just about me, but it's about individuals who have been defamed and fired at the university. And it breaks my heart because these are just real people who came to work at the university.
But in reading your book also, even though it's about Florida Gulf Coast University, I could say that a lot of this happens in various corporations all over the country.
Correct.
This is not anything that people should think that,
That's
this is
correct.
worldwide, and that's why your book is a great read and a case study at the highest level. You have always been a stand-up guy. You've always spoken your mind, even when you used to come on my show in happier times.
Yes, sir.
You were always concerned about the disenfranchised,
That's correct.
helping the disenfranchised,
Correct.
and I'm looking forward to getting you back here now because you're an educator now at it's the high school or middle school level.
The middle school. Yes,
right. But keep up the good work and keep on keeping us informed of what's going on. And we got to dig into this book some more, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, as the saying goes on this particular show, for those who say it can't be done, they're usually interrupted by those like Dr. Patrick Davis, a renowned author now of Defamed and Fired, who are doing it. We'll be right back. There you go. Let me see now. Will we be right back?